All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board for the board. We hope that you enjoy. Take two. Welcome to episode 123 of the KissFAQ podcast. I was trying to think, we're doing two shows this week, and I can't remember what's what. But hey, there's a new face on the screen, and that is Mitch Lafon.
Yes,
welcome to the show, sir. It's good to see you and to get another new face on this. And joining us are St. Louis Kiss Lonnie.
Hello.
And the voice of reason, 69th Blizzard Ken. Gentlemen, it's always an honor to be in your presence too. So, hey Mitch, it's great to get you on this show. Why don't you just tell everyone, we always do an intro for people that you get to tell us your what got you into Kiss, your favorite album, and your favorite guy. So, monologue time.
Monologue time. Well, very simply, back in the day when it was vinyl and, my brother was around, he would leave these Kiss records lying on the ground by the record player. And I had been listening to Beethoven's Fifth, and I had been listening to ABBA. And you know what? It was the visual of the albums. I remember very specifically the Love Gun album with the Kiss blood, and I said, all right, I'm going to put this on. And that was it. I mean, I was hooked. And then after that, once my brother stopped with all the Kiss stuff, I went on and bought the Dynasty album and the solo albums. And then I interviewed Gene for the Unmasked album. I mean, it was that sort of quick from 0 to 60 in about 3 years. And it was just great times. And so here I am all these years later. Favorite album, I bring it down to these three. I always say I love the first one, Kiss Kiss, because when you look at it and you look at the songs, forget production, just look at the songs that they're still playing in the set list. A lot of them are those songs. They're that good that they've held a test of time. Then Creatures of the Night. There was that period where there was confusion and Peter left and this and that, and then they came back with this Creatures of the Night album. Drum sound was phenomenal. The visual of the artwork was phenomenal, and the songs were great. So, maybe in 2017 when you look back and you say, well, this album, that album, but when you're living it in the context and in the moment, it just had that effect of, oh my God, we're living through the Knack and we're living through Blondie and we're living through all these things, and here's Kiss. Oh, riding back to the forefront. And then same thing, I would have to go with Revenge. So those are my three ones, and I'll tell you why Revenge. And I was thinking about this just the other day. We had the cavalcade of guitarists in the 80s. We went from Vinnie, we went from Ace to Vinnie to Mark to Bruce, and you kept thinking, well, where's the next guy going to come from? And of course, Crazy Nights was Kiss trying to be Bon Jovi, and then they came back and they became Kiss again. And Bruce became the guitarist. For many years, rightly or wrongly, he was just the guy that wasn't Ace. Oh, he's not Ace. Oh, he's not Ace. He's the new guy. But then on Revenge, he became Bruce, the guitarist for Kiss. At least that's how I see it. And so those are the three that have that impact on me. You can debate all you want whether they're the best album or not the best album. But those are the ones that contextually living it at 18, 19, or 12 or whatever, they go, it's like, oh, Bon Jovi, Def Leppard, oh, Kiss is back, and same thing. It's like the Knack and Blondie, oh, Kiss is back. And so they had those moments where they sort of went, yoo-hoo, we haven't disappeared. And so those would be my three, and which is the favorite? I don't know. I mean, my favorite when I was under 12 would have been Kiss Kiss. The favorite after 12 would have been, just because they all had a marking moment in the evolution of what I was doing, what they were doing, how they were redefining themselves from being on the forefront to chasing singles. Kiss Kiss is them on the forefront. Creatures of the Night is them saying, hey, we're not going to do this disco stuff anymore. And Revenge is saying, okay, forget it. We're not Bon Jovi. We get it. So let's just be Kiss again. And so those are the ones that really are like, okay,
so
I'm with you.
Just so you know that there's someone on the KissFAQ message board right now who's saying that your opinion of your favorite albums are wrong. So let's just get that out of the way. You're wrong.
Well, of course.
Who's your favorite guy? I mean, who is that one person who you think Kiss and your head's going to tell you one answer probably, your heart's going to tell you the other. Who's that guy who kind of defines Kiss for you that you just he's your guy.
You know, you just said head and heart. The head says it's Paul Stanley. No Paul Stanley, no Kiss, because he was in the 1980s. Gene took a vacation. No Paul Stanley. There's no Kiss in 2017. We know that. The heart says Ace Frehley. I just, there's just something about that lovable. What's the word? I don't want to call him a doofus because he's not a doofus, but he's just this lovable character who's just plays the guitar like nobody else. And should he be in the band? Shouldn't he? No, whatever. He's Ace, and you gotta love Ace, and that's it. So the heart says Ace. The head, of course, is Paul. I mean, Paul, no Kiss.
Yep.
And period, end of story. But Ace for me, and that's no disrespect to Bruce, no disrespect to Vinnie, no disrespect to Tommy. Tommy's doing a great job. I have nothing against Tommy wearing the makeup as he's wearing it. But Ace is my guy.
It's totally not a trick question. It's just everyone's got these answers. People have said Vinnie, people have said Tommy as well, and you know what? It doesn't matter because it's all Kiss.
It's true.
There is, you're not winning an award for selecting which color Kool-Aid you want. If it is Kool-Aid, except for one of the guys after the fact. So it ultimately doesn't matter. So just before we get into today's topic, what are you doing at the moment? Because you were on a podcast. You've been doing your own thing, one-on-one. You've been on one-on-one on your own for quite a while, and I think you hooked up with Sirius.
Podcast One.
Podcast One. So
yes, I was doing one-on-one with Mitch Lafon, interviewing all the different rock stars, from Alice Cooper to David Coverdale to all these guys. And Chris Jericho, the wrestler, emailed me probably back in February and said, "Hey, I've been listening to your show, and I need a rock show on the Jericho Network on Podcast One. Who do I contact to see if you'd be available?" And I said, "Well, I'm a one-man show. I'm it." And so I agreed to go over to the Podcast One network with Chris Jericho on the Jericho Network. So I've got Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. And, it is a perfectly logical move. I still do the interviews. I still, I've just had on Deep Purple. I just had guys on from Derek and the Dominoes, Dead Daisy, John Corabi, Bruce Kulick. And I'm on a platform that is as significant right now as Sirius XM. I mean, there's it's got Dr. Drew, it's got Adam Carolla, it's got Joe Rogan. I mean, it's got all these big names. Richard Marx, Eddie Trunk is on there, Chris Jericho is on there, and then right at the bottom there, Mitch Lafon, Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. So no, it's great, and it's great fun, and I'm very much looking forward to expanding the business, I guess, for the lack of a better word. Get bigger and bigger guests. I mean, I just had a request in for Alice Cooper today, so let's hope that comes through.
Well, congratulations on that and moving up. You've gone from Kiss opening and not even being on the bill in right. New Year's Eve 73, 74, to doing something bigger and better. So, power to you for moving that up the ladder. So,
thank you.
Lonnie,
it's a hustle.
Lonnie's having to be quiet over there for a few minutes.
It's unusual.
So let's not dominate
Try not to interrupt.
Let's jump straight into today's topic, which is celebrating the 25th anniversary of Revenge. And, I've been, somewhat unkind to this album in the past. So I'm going to say nothing today. Actually, I've been writing about Revenge this week, and I've been listening to the album, and I got to say, it's changed my opinion now that it's reaching 25. All of a sudden, maybe it's becoming a little bit more legitimate in my mind. It's still got all the cornball stuff that we'll talk about right. That'll probably come up. But, Lonnie, let's start with you. First question is, the death of Eric Carr. Could the band have chosen a better drummer to replace Eric than Eric? Let's just start with, getting into Revenge is they're going to be taking revenge on the death of their drummer, because that all ties into the creation of this album, So let's start with that. Your thoughts on Eric Carr's passing and, where they went drum-wise.
I remember when Eric Carr died. I remember hearing, I wasn't watching MTV at the time, and not that MTV covered it extensively or anything like that either. But I remember I was in 7th grade, and this is how much Kiss means to me, I can tell you where I was when I found out Eric Carr died. I was sitting in the lunchroom at school, and a buddy of mine sitting across from me said, Lonnie, you knew I was a big Kiss fan. And I wasn't as hardcore as I became, but he knew I was a big Kiss fan. He goes, did you hear that Kiss's drummer died? And I said, what? And I remember I'm in 7th grade. I'm not really into, and there was no internet. You really didn't know, extensively what was going on or how sick Eric Carr was. And for me, being 12, 13 years old, I didn't even know he was sick. And I go, what? And he goes, yeah, it was a drummer of Kiss. He died. I go, and the only thing I can think of, well, which one? Was it Eric Carr or was it Peter Criss? I did, what do you mean? He goes, no, it was the guy that's in the band now. And I was like, are you sure? He goes, yeah. And I was devastated. I thought, well, what are they going to do? He's been the drummer since 1980. And are they going to bring, the first thing I thought, well, would they bring Peter back? What would they do? So I was devastated when I heard Eric Carr die, because I really questioned where the band would go at this point, because they had been around. And even in my eyes, when in 1991, they were old by that point in my eyes when I was 12 years old. Well, Kiss had been around a long time. They're old. So would the band call it quits? Even, I thought, and would they bring Peter Criss back? What are they going to do? But to answer the other part of your question, could they have found a better drummer than Eric Singer? Absolutely not. Knowing I was going to do the show today, when I went for my morning run, I listened to Revenge start to finish and listened to it on headphones as I'm running. It is powerful. And the drumming on just Unholy right out of the gate is intense. And going for the sound that they wanted, going back to what Mitch said earlier, going back to Kiss being Kiss and having a hard album, a metal album, they couldn't have picked a better guy for the job than Eric Singer. He knocks it out of the park.
Ken, how about you? Obviously, we'll talk a little bit more about some of your revenge stories, but, when Eric passed, did you start thinking about, possible replacements or how they'd handle that situation?
Yeah, I already had seen what Eric Singer with on the Paul Stanley solo tour when Paul Stanley came around out here. And, I knew they were going to continue and not stop. I didn't know, who they were going to pick. But when they did pick Eric Singer, I was like, well, yeah, I know this guy. He's pretty darn good. So from that standpoint, yeah, it didn't bother me. It bothered me that Eric Carr died, of course. But I knew they were going to go on and find a new drummer the same way they've gone on and found drummers before, and found Eric Carr or found guitarists. So, yeah, it was okay, and it turned out to be a real good thing having him in there.
Yep. Mitch, your take on that?
I love Eric Singer, and I've told this story before. I didn't know Kiss had a new album because, like he said, there was no internet, there was no delivery method like we're used to now. So you'd find out about a new album by walking by the record store. And on Kiss Revenge, I walked by the TV in the living room. It happened to be on Much Music, and I saw this band playing and doing this song, and I saw this blonde drummer, and I went, holy mackerel, this guy's awesome. And I saw this guy who looked like Gene and this guy who looked like Paul. I'm like, wait a minute. But there's this blonde drummer. I had no idea. And it turns out it was Unholy and Eric Singer. And I was like, man, I'm buying this album. I mean, I have to go get this. So, yeah, I mean, I was exceptionally sad that Eric Carr passed away. But I never had any doubts that they wouldn't continue. I mean, they continued past Ace. And you thought, well, that's not possible. And then they continued past Vinnie, and you went, well, I don't know about that. Right? They continued past all these people, so it just never occurred to me that they wouldn't keep going. It just, having been with them since my childhood, it was just sort of like, no, Mitch is alive, so Kiss is alive. That's just the way life goes, And so, no, when I heard that video, I had no idea that there was an album coming. I had no idea that they had anything. And I just saw it and I went, yeah, that's it. And, I would say he's my favorite Kiss drummer ever. I just like the fact that he can do the 70s stuff and make it sound right. He can do the 80s stuff and make it sound right. And his own stuff is just monstrous, right? So, no, Eric Singer is perfect.
Without a doubt. I don't even remember how I found. Actually, I was watching MTV. I was at Penn State, in Pennsylvania, of all places, and I remember the news coming on, and I was absolutely shocked. And then Freddie died, and that overshadowed everything as well, because I was pretty big into Queen at the time. The 80s Queen is what I got into, just like with Kiss. I came in with them in the kind of Magic era and worked my way back. So it was like a 1-2 punch at the time, just absolutely stunned. And then Eric Singer, I hadn't seen or known much about what was going on with the solo tour because I was in Southeast Asia and just wasn't getting news out then. I did know that he'd eventually had played, but I had gotten into Badlands, so I was into the Ray Gillen side of stuff, and I discovered that album, which I still love to this day as one of the very, very best debuts any band has ever put out. And that made me go back and I listened to the seventh whatever it is, and Eternal Seventh Star and Eternal Idol, right. In Black Sabbath, because I was only into the Ozzy stuff prior to that. So I knew a bit about Eric Singer, but I thought he was absolutely monstrous. A very good young drummer. Not that young, but young enough. I liked the contrast that bringing a Blondie in. That was the only thing that I was like, are they going to make him dye his hair? Go on Motley Crue and you got to have dark hair. And, I'm glad they let him be himself, because he certainly he was like almost a natural evolution to Eric Carr. He had something special that didn't make Eric Carr look like a bad drummer. It was nothing like that. It was like they replaced him with someone who could do Eric Carr and could do Peter Criss and do Eric Singer. So he was like the total package in terms of a drummer. Let's get into Revenge. And I'm going to go straight back to you, Mitch. And that was your first impression of Revenge was Unholy, right? Seeing that song. Yeah. And what did you think of Kiss doing that sort of music? I mean, you got guitar scrapes at the beginning of it. The video, the pentagrams and children and Damien Omen type imagery and all that. It was pretty wild.
Oh, it was very wild. And here you had Kiss that had just come off of Crazy Nights and Reason to Live, and then Hot in the Shade and, Fluffy and Read My Body. And you were just expecting them to keep going down that path of, we're Bon Jovi light, and they came out and it was glorious. It was a recapturing of their spirit. It had that sort of New York street cred. I just loved it. I loved everything about it. And listen, music was changing. Motley Crue had gotten a little louder on Dr. Feelgood and the Metallica Black album. It was time for Kiss to get into that. Yeah, we let's crank up these guitars, and it really reminded me of what they did with Creatures of the Night, because they had, if you look at the pattern, Dynasty was a little watered down, and Unmasked was a little watered down, and then The Elder was The Elder, and then Creatures of the Night, and then so we had this pattern sort of repeating. Asylum was, and then and then Revenge. So it seems to be like, yeah, they realize, like, okay, we watered it down. Let's get back out there and let's kick some ass. And it was great. It was great. There's no complaining about the sound, the look. The look was fierce. We had just gone through, not only had we gone through Def Leppard and all that, but now we were into Sleazebees and Tough and all these other bands that were looking even more and more effeminate. And now Kiss was like, nah, we're going to get right back to looking like these street New York punks. And it was like, all right, I'm down for that. I like punks,
And no offense to Bruce Kulick, it's anything that got rid of that silly nuclear waste imaged suit is a good thing. And obviously he didn't have that on the Hot in the Shade tour. They'd already taken the first steps. You go from Crazy Nights, which is all saccharine. I want to be John Bon Jovi and do a Slippery When Wet album, into Hot in the Shade. Well, that didn't work and we have no money left, so we're just going to throw everything that we can out there and see if anything sticks. That's the Gene Simmons shotgun approach, I think, Hot in the Shade. And something did stick in the form of Forever. And then you get to Revenge, and well, we've got nothing else left to do here, so we're just going to try and do what we did with Destroyer. We're going to focus on the songs. Yep. We're going to focus on the guitars and, focus on certain areas of what makes Kiss Kiss. So Ken, how do you like their approach with Revenge? And I'm sure we've talked about it before, but just for the sake of first questions, what was your first experience with Revenge? Was it a song? Was it what was the first song you heard from the album?
Well, it's similar to Mitch. I caught it Unholy on Headbangers Ball. I think the first time it appeared on there. And I think it was probably from a recording, because I recorded that stuff on VHS every, whatever, it was Saturday nights, I think, right? Yeah. So I saw that, and I couldn't believe I had this kind of feeling going up, like the back of your spine. It's like, wow, it was exciting. I mean, to see them back after the prior years of, like Mitch was saying, chasing Bon Jovi and so on. That was the first song, and I was just so excited. I mean, I think around that time when they showed that's when they announced they were going to go do and they may have announced it on MTV, that they were going to do that club tour. So that's when, I knew I was going to have to look out for that. But yeah, that song was just awesome. The video was awesome. I'm like, they're back. They're back now.
Nice. Lonnie, now, Revenge is very close to your heart, I know. So, first time you ever experienced it, first song?
Ken and I were watching the same thing. I saw it on Headbangers Ball. I saw Unholy. And what struck me is that the music had changed so much from what they had been putting out. Like you guys have already mentioned, that it went from this watered down fluff to being a tough metal band again. And not only was the music tough and the music better, but Kiss looked tough and looked cool to me as a 12-year-old kid. They were dressed in black, they were dressed in leather. They looked mean. They looked how you would think Kiss is supposed to look without the makeup for the first time ever. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned like the pentagrams and demonic symbols in Unholy. It didn't help my mom's thought that Kiss was satanic when she saw that with me watching that. So, but that as a kid though, that makes you like him even more if your parents hate him. So it was even better that my mom hated the video, because it just made me gravitate to it even more and just wait for it to come on again, and made me want to go out to the record store and get the CD. But no, my first impression was Unholy, and it blew me away, because if you would have told me at the time that Kiss's new video, and I didn't know if Kiss's new video was going to debut or something, I just watched it because that's what I did on Saturday nights, because I didn't have to get up early to go to school the next day. But if you would have told me that Kiss's new video was going to debut that night, I wouldn't have, as 12 years old, I wouldn't have dreamed that that's what it would have looked like or what it would have sounded like. And it just blew me away, and it just captured me and upped my levelness of a Kiss fan immensely.
Yeah, it would have been very different at that point, stylistically. I didn't get to see it until it came out on video, because I just did not see that. I saw them in magazines around the time that the album was coming out, so probably Kerrang! And Raw or Rip or whatever all these were. And my first impression was they're trying to be Motley Crue. Motley Crue, I think, Feel Good had come out in, 89?
Correct.
And they had gone the same kind of transformation. Girls, they'd been kind of pretty leather, for want of a better phrase. And then, they toughened it up more in the Feel Good. And Gene, though, I always thought he finally looks good. For the first time out of makeup, Gene had finally found a look and a wig that worked for him. So... I don't know if it's real hair, it doesn't matter. But he looked good. Paul always looks good. And, Bruce finally looked like a heavy metal guitar player. I thought he looked good, in 84. But, he was back to that. The suit jacket was gone. And they just looked good as a band. But I was cynical as an 18-year-old. I'm like, they're just trying to be... edgy again, and same with the music on there. So, it's never been a high-end album for me, because I was so I was enjoying Nirvana, to be honest, and that's all we listened to in the house. The stuff that was getting played on MTV, and it certainly wasn't Kiss at that time, or when I was watching it. So, let's kind of dig in a little bit now. You get this album, you get Unholy, you start hearing I Just Wanna, and some of the other songs. Lonnie, what are the real high points on this album for you that, as we celebrate its 25th anniversary, the things that jump out at you right now that you say, this is what makes it a great album that's worth celebrating and doing an expanded edition for?
It's Unholy, and we already talked about that. But it's also I Just Wanna. I mean, I remember seeing I Just Wanna on MTV quite a bit that summer of '92. It got more airplay than most Kiss things on MTV ever have. And again, same thing. The play on words in the I Just Wanna video. My mother hated it. I loved it even more. I told her, no, Mom, they're not saying that. If you look at the album in the lyrics here, it says, I just want to forget you. And my mom begged, you know what? They can write whatever they want in there. I know what they're saying. But as a kid though, it just made me love it even more. And so that song is still great to me. And I wish, and they haven't played it since the Revenge Tour, which is a fun song. So I don't understand. It's a fun song. It's a fun song that if you watch like those videos from the Revenge Tour, or you watch Confidential or whatever, it was a fun song for them to play live, and there was audience interacted, and that it was a great song. I think Take It Off's is a fun one too, and Domino. I don't know if I have a favorite song or a least favorite song on there. Maybe God Gave Rock and Roll to You, because it just doesn't fit on the album to me, and we can get on stuff that we don't like about it later. But as I'm listening to it this morning, and I'm just going through it song by song, and you hear Spit, and then you hear God Gave Rock and Roll to You, and then you hear Domino. Well, one is not like the others. And what it's doing smashed in between those two songs, it just doesn't fit in there at all. And if you want to put it on there, maybe I would have put it last on there as maybe a tribute to Eric Carr at the very end of the album, instead of smashed in between Spit and Domino. It just doesn't make sense to me at all, especially when you listen to it track by track. But Unholy, I Just Wanna, but Bruce's guitar on there, and you guys talked about Bruce a little bit. Bruce became, like Mitch said earlier, the guitarist in Kiss for that album. He just came into his own and wasn't imitating anyone or trying to sound like anyone anymore. He was just metal, and he became, in my eyes, and especially at the time, the status of like a Mick Mars and those late '80s, early '90s type guitarists, even a Slasher, even something like that. He was Kiss's guitar player, like Mick Mars was Motley Crue's guitar player, and Slash was Guns N' Roses' guitar player. He wasn't Kiss's replacement guitar player. He was it, because his riffs on that album just solidified him in the band for me.
I just like the image of trying to get Bruce angry to play that sort of guitar work.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why they did bring Vinnie in, because that's the only way to get
maybe that pissed him off.
Get him angry, because he has said in interviews, and I don't know if you've ever asked him, Mitch, that he stopped thinking so much and started playing from the balls, is what he said.
Yep.
In terms of the guitar, and I think you compare the guitar work with, say, Crazy Nights. That is outstanding guitar work, but it sounds like shit. It just does not sound like Kiss. It's great for what it is, and it's stellar work, very intricate, exactly what people were playing in '87. But in '92, all of a sudden, you've got a guitarist who can really grind, and it's heavy metal as it's supposed to be. Mitch, what are some of your really high points out of the album that jump out at you?
Well, the same thing as Lonnie. Honestly, I Just Wanna is probably one of my favorite Kiss songs ever, not just from Revenge. I just think that song is fun, totally underplayed, totally ignored for no reason. I mean, you throw that into a set list today, and you've got the crowd singing back and forth with you. It would be perfect. Unholy, of course, because that's the one that changed everything. Again, and I keep saying Bon Jovi, but I had gone total hair metal in the 80s and almost forgot about Kiss, and Unholy is the one that said, come back here, buddy boy. And so that one has to go there. Every time I look at you, I thought was just a great power ballad. Kiss had tried. Forever was good and stuff. I'm not going to complain. Reason to Live was okay. But every time I look at you, I thought was exceptionally special. And the guitar work and the solo done by Dick Wagner was also, I know, also great. And then, Spit. And years later, and you all know this, I did this Kiss tribute album, and I had the guys from Accept do Spit. And that song, it just works, when you get a band like Accept, or you get a band like Kiss that's just hitting these high notes and hitting this heavy kind of vibe. That's a great song. It's a great sort of 3-minute piss and vinegar song, and you can't deny that, so you've got these. And as far as God Gave Rock and Roll to You, as much as I Just Want to Use one of my favorite, God Gave Rock and Roll to You is probably one of the songs I just cannot stand on any level. So yeah, I agree, that should have been a bonus track or thrown at the end, or left on the floor for Do You Want to Touch Me Now. Yeah, but that aside, I Just Wanna, Unholy, Every Time I Look at You, Spit. That's it. That's all. I mean, there's the other stuff on there, Paralyzed and Take It Off. But without those 4, that album doesn't work.
Yeah, nice. Good thoughts. Ken, let's get to you before we change gears again.
Okay. Yeah, all the songs. I mean, especially what stuck out to me, on the first listen way back, was the Gene Simmons songs, where for the first time in probably since Creatures or even before, are just top-notch songs. And Unholy, leading off the album was a big surprise too, on its own, because Paul usually was, reserved for that space on every album. But the Gene Simmons songs, from Unholy to Domino, Thou Shalt Not, which I love, Paralyzed, and I know he co-wrote it, trades off with Paul on Spit, but everything, his mark on that album is huge, and that's one of the bigger reasons why that album's so good, because he was back from those, for instance, Animalized year, that period, even Hot in the Shade, and it's just, he was gone. He was out for lunch. So as far as the Paul Stanley songs, they took a little longer for me to get, catch on for me. No technically real anthem, I guess you can call, Take It Off almost an anthem, but not really. It's an anthem for taking off your clothes. But that's a great song. I mean, I love that song. And then I Just Wanna is another great song. Though, they borrowed that from the, Lick or whatever, part of it from the Summertime Blues.
Summertime Blues, yeah.
Right. So,
but like Paul Stanley says, if you're going to steal from the best, right?
Yeah. Great song. So the end, I agree with Lonnie and Mitch that, God Gave, which I love the song. I think it's a great song. It is a little bit out of place. They did record it separately from the rest of the album, but yeah, I think it should have been tacked on the final song on the album would have been a good way to go for that.
Yeah, so, that would have made a stunning last song on the album. You do Car Jam, so you got a bombastic drum solo, and all that, and then into God Gave. It's like a little message as well.
It doesn't fit in between What You Are is What You Eat and That Bitch Bends Over. It just doesn't fit in between those two songs. I'm sorry.
I don't know. Both of those kind of just scream God giving rock and roll to you, in a twisted, perverted kind of sort of way. But you've all mentioned I Just Wanna and Take It Off, which they're the cringeworthy songs. Spit. They are total cringeworthy songs for me. Always have been. I've grown a bit more into Take It Off in recent years, especially the Alive 3 version, which I prefer, just because you get a bit more of the party atmosphere coming through, and Paul Stanley as MC. But, here's a guy who loves Asylum and got into Kiss because of All Night, and I've got the audacity to say anything negative about Spit or, I Just Wonder. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's ironic. It's completely... doesn't make any sense, but there you are. That's me. Every time I look at you, I think it's 10 times the ballad that Forever was. And it's really a shame that nothing happened for this album. This album stiffed at 500,000, basically. Never got past gold. As late as we have for SoundScan figures, March 2012 was when we did when Tim did the interview with Paul Green and got 688,000 is all it did in sales. Did I think 350,000 worldwide on top of that. So just about 1 million does not do justice the amount of effort. I'm going to say Bob Ezrin. This is his shining moment with Kiss because it nails everything in terms of sound. Obviously, I'm asking the wrong group of people because we're Kiss fans. Bob Ezrin, what's his magic in this album that you think what he really did for the band to help them produce this, Lonnie?
He did the same thing he did with Destroyers, and he took the songwriting and the musicianship on the album to another level. I'll say that more than anything. Is it just as he took Peter Criss's drumming to a different level on Destroyer, and worked Peter's ass off to get it the way he wanted it. Look what he did to the sound on Revenge. I mean, look how drastically different it sounds than anything they had done since Creatures, for that matter. I mean, he went in there and said, this is how, we're going to do it. That, we're getting away from it's 1992 or late 91, whenever they recorded it. We're getting away from all the fluff that you guys did. Listen to what's popular right now. Guns N' Roses had put out Use Your Illusion, and Aerosmith was doing what they were doing. Motley Crue was doing, we mentioned them. Get away from all this, and you guys are going to focus on playing your instruments and playing them right, and we're going to make it sound competitive with what was hot at the time. We mentioned Metallica too, and how they almost looked like Metallica in a way, with all black and looking tough. But Ezrin came in and put his stamp on it, in my opinion. And what Ezrin has done, he did the same thing he did with Destroyer. He brought the musicianship to another level, and without him, you don't get that crisp sound. And Julian, we've mentioned on the show in the past, and maybe you don't like all the songs on there, but there's no denying that the sound on that album is that they never got that. They've never had, maybe since Creatures, they haven't had that great of a sound prior. And in my opinion, they've never had that good of a sound since. And it's kind of a shame that they haven't had that good of a sound on an album since 1992. But Ezrin is to thank for that, in my opinion.
Ken, what about you? I mean, what did you think about Bob Ezrin coming back to work with the band? Obviously, you and Mitch are both longtime fans who predate us, who had to go through the Elder.
Yeah, well,
any nerves? He wasn't exactly on a hot streak in the late 80s, early 90s, was he? I mean, he was kind of doing meat and potatoes work, working with good artists, don't get me wrong, but he wasn't exactly doing anything on the level of The Wall. He wasn't doing $1 Billion Babies or anything like that. His last, really great album for me had been Momentary Lapse of Reason, that kind of screamed Bob Ezrin is back and doing magical work. But what did you think that he was going to be able to do, or, kind of not do?
Well, the one thing I think I knew he was going to get them to do is become more focused on the music and on what they're doing, and to really, build the song, have a complete song, not just partial bits like they had at other times where some songs are not usually you can tell certain songs are not complete or fully thought out. I think he helps them, direct them into a way to complete the song. He may have his ideas of how to stick something in here or there, or say, hey Bruce, give me a real nasty guitar lick on this part of the song, or whatever, or Phil and that sort of thing. I think that's the thing that Bob hears things. I think he can visualize it, I guess, in his mind, the music and how he the whole picture of it, and he helps the band focus and gets them focused in writing and performing on a next level up. I was happy that he came back. I didn't know what I was going to get. Come on, the Elder. It's I like the Elder, but it's different. It was what they tried to do. They did, and that's what we got. I think it wasn't a bad production. It was just the wrong idea at the wrong time, kind of thing. So Revenge, yes, Bob, I think it was good, and because I don't know who else they were gonna go with. I didn't want them to self-produce. I knew that.
Yeah, I think Hot in the Shade is a good example, of Vinnie Poncia came into those sessions to help them with the writing, but he had not the same effect that Ezrin had in the songwriting, or I guess we never know exactly, except we can judge the difference in quality between the two albums. So, Mitch, Bob Ezrin, does he finally give you the album that he should have given you in 1981, a hard rock masterpiece, a heavy metal masterpiece?
Yeah, he does, and I think what Bob brings is he brings control to the studio. There is no yes man with Bob Ezrin in there, and when you're working with Gene and Paul, you might get intimidated if you're some other producer. You might just say, "Oh yes, of course, Paul, that's a great idea." "Oh yes, Gene." Bob's not going to go with that. He's going to say yes, and he's going to bring respect to that studio. They have respect for him. He has respect for them, and he has control. He goes, "This is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen," and you can't get away with, extra guitar solos here or all kinds of weird lyrics there. You can't get away with a Hot in the Shade with Bob Ezrin there, because he's just not going to put up with that. And that's what he brought to The Wall. That's what he brought to Destroyer. And even with this one, with Bruce Kulick, he wasn't getting the solo he wanted on Every Time I Look at You. And so, and Take It Off with Kevin Valentine, he will get what he wants. And he's not, because his name's on there, and he cares about his name, and he cares about that. And the other thing that was important at the time, like Ken was saying, is that Bob wasn't really at the top of his game, or maybe it was you that was saying it. They sort of both needed each other, and they both needed this to be the next Destroyer, because I think Bob was at my production, I'm not getting those A-level bands again. And Kiss was like, we're not getting those A-level sales again. It was just a perfect storm of the producer needed the band needed the producer, and this was a producer that's not a yes man. He's not going to sit there and go, "Oh my God, Gene is talking to me, I'm going to do whatever." And that's why we got a good album. That to me is why we got a good album.
So do you guys think that Bruce Kulick was put through boot camp by Bob? Obviously, Peter Criss was the MVP of Destroyer because of the efforts of what it took to get that performance out of him and how hard he worked to survive working with Bob Ezrin. Mm-hmm. Bruce has a completely different personality type, and obviously being a very professional musician who had worked with everyone under the sun by the time he gets to 1992. I mean, he's done Stevie, he's done Bolton, he's done Don Johnson, he's done Meatloaf. So there's no questioning his ability, but translating it into the harder edge stuff, I think really gave Bruce a paradigm shift in his approach to the guitar. After that, he's got all these different guitars, all these different sounds, and he has totally changed as a guitarist. I mean, is it fair to say Bob Ezrin changed Bruce Kulick's life? Lonnie, what do you think on that?
I think it's fair to say maybe he put him through boot camp a little bit for what he was demanding, for what what Bob envisioned the album sounding like, and ultimately ended up being. But I think too, I think maybe the reins on Bruce Kulick, he was given a little more latitude that he could do more, and he wasn't told, no, we're going with this formula because we want to sound for whatever they were trying to accomplish in the 80s with Crazy Nights and Hot in the Shade, and for that matter, for what they were doing. I think they gave him and said, you know what, you can be more metal, you can play with more style, and we're not going to have these constraints on you. And it showcased Bruce in a lot of ways. So I think that the answer to that is really a combination of the two. I think Bob demanded a lot from Bruce for what he envisioned for the album, but I think they gave Bruce a lot more latitude than he had been given in previous albums, and finally got to showcase why he was chosen for the band.
That's a good point. Ken, do you think that Gene Simmons was maybe put through a boot camp again and said, no, you're not allowed to bring all this dreck into the sessions?
Probably. I mean, they probably picked, his songs out of 50 songs, and that was, those were the songs. And of course, Vinnie Vincent helped write a little bit too. So you gotta give him some credit there. And as for, Bruce Kulick's solos, I think he was just blossoming at the time, I think, and finally was able to express his guitar, and the thing is, he was I was going to say fulfilling, the song itself is, the songs are better, and that kind of drives your guitar playing. So the songs that we got a better group of songs now, so now his guitar level is up there to meet that, and able to fill those spots, raise his level to those songs, the quality. So everything quality wise went up, and I think it's kind of like a perfect storm.
I always have kind of an imaginary image in my head of Paul Stanley producing the previous albums, and Gene comes in with his box of cassettes. Okay, Paul, I've got my stuff. I'm ready to do an album. And Paul's just looking at, okay, Gene, we'll put this one on, we'll put this one on, this one on, and then kind of snickering it. Gene's going to sing this shit on an album. And he's got Reason to Live. He's got all his stuff. It's like, there was no one like Paul in control. So I think that really helps Gene on this album, because this is Gene's this is Gene's revenge in some ways, that he's back. He looks good, he sounds good, and his material is stunning on this album, I think, in comparison with what had come before. So, Mitch, do you think Gene got put through the boot camp of Bob Ezrin saying, and maybe Bob Ezrin saying to Paul Stanley, no, you're not having Read My Body on this album, stuff like that.
Right.
They both they needed a filter.
Well, that's it. And that's what I was trying to say before. It's that respect, and that's what Bob brings to the studio. And on this, I think everybody goes through boot camp. I think Eric Singer goes through it. He's probably saying, hey, this can be better. Because Bob likes good. He likes perfection. So Paul probably got put through boot camp. Gene certainly got put through boot camp, because they were looking at the 80s going, what was these last 10 years, dude? We got to pick up our game. Bruce, all of them. That's what Bob does. He puts everybody through the ringer and expects the best, and usually gets the best. And so, and that's the other thing, again, and I'll reiterate, there is no yes man in Bob Ezrin. So whatever you brought, if it wasn't top of the top game, top level, he's not just going to go, put it on the album. He's going to say no. And the Kiss needed somebody in the studio that wasn't afraid to say no. And there's nobody else out there, or at that time, like Bob Ezrin to say that to Kiss, because I think anybody else would have gone, oh my God, I'm working with Kiss. Yeah, well, no, Bob doesn't, he's not impressed by that. He's done The Wall. He's done $1 Billion Baby. He's not impressed with, it's Gene Simmons sitting next to me. And that's what the band needed. And I think the results speak for themselves, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, after doing The Elder and the fiasco that followed that with Bob, he wouldn't talk to them, would he? I think that's been made pretty clear that he was offended by them reaching out to Jack Douglas to possibly do the next album after that, and panicking about the work of that they'd done. And then after the Elder, Kiss didn't want to talk to him. He became a convenient scapegoat. And, coming back, both parties had a lot invested in having a successful album, because they'd had a successful album but not a successful outcome. In that, they hadn't gone to the next step by having him produce Rock and Roll Over. Do you think Lonnie, there was just so much invested in this that there was no way that they were going to fail, that a Revenge album was just, they're coming off the death of their drummer, they've got a new member of the band, they're working with Bob Ezrin again, it's like a perfect storm of reasons to succeed?
Yeah, I think that success was. I think they knew what they were doing was going to be successful. That, maybe not by album sales. You read the album sales earlier, but I think they knew that they at least had a Creatures of the Night quality of album that they were putting out. That it really was the perfect storm of what, Gene's got his head back in the game. Maybe he's working with Vinnie and he's bringing quality into the studio, and we're getting quality songs out of our two main songwriters. Our new drummer is kick ass. Bruce was coming into his own. He was blossoming, in Ken's words. But we're giving him some more latitude, and you had a great producer. It really was the perfect storm for Kiss to put out one of their best products that they have, in my opinion. And I guess maybe if it had came out a year or two earlier, maybe it would have gotten the album sales, or maybe the attention that it deserved, as opposed to coming out in '92 when it did, and music going through the change from hard rock into grunge. But as far as if you just listen to the album on its own and forget about album sales or trends in music at the time, it really is, the product is fantastic. And Kiss talks about it to this day, like when they were going to release an album, like when they were releasing Monster. Oh, it's Destroyer, and it's a clash of Destroyer and Revenge, and which whatever, say whatever you want. They always compare things back to Revenge or Creatures or Destroyer. I think in Gene and Paul's mind, it's up there in quality with those other albums that we've championed in the past. So yeah, I don't think I think they had all the elements in place for a successful product. And they talk about how much they love the album, but you don't play anything off the album hardly. So I don't get that.
That's a crying shame. Since this is
that's another story.
Since we're celebrating the 25th anniversary of this album, let's think about an expanded edition and help Universal come up with an idea of how to put out a proper expanded edition. If you want to talk music, if you want to talk packaging, Ken, what would you like to see if Universal were to bless us with a extended release that actually meant something for this album?
Extended release. Well, there's some, I know, demos that were recorded for this, some other songs, and I know, Julian, you had played some of those for me when we had a car ride going down to LA.
Did I play Do You Want to Touch Me Now? Did we play that one?
Yeah.
Kind of ho-hum without the rest of the guitar work, but there you go.
Right. So I would love to hear that, hear those. Also, I would like to, maybe if there's some other demo form of songs, just to hear, or to see the what it was first like and what it turned out to be. I also would like to see maybe a good live, whether it's a video or a live show. If they somehow professionally recorded a good show from the Revenge tour or from the club. I mean, there's the bootleg, out there, from the club show I saw in San Francisco. And I love to listen to that. But if they could have, something like that, add some video, maybe some notes from Bob Ezrin on the recording, and liner notes and stuff like that. So yeah, any little extras that they might have recorded would be good to add on there too.
Yeah, I was reading an interview with Bruce when I was writing the stuff earlier this week, and he was actually saying that he thought that some of the bootlegs from the club tour sounded better than a live 3 to him because they were more, kind of organic. And I hope I haven't misquoted him. I think it was Bruce, and he certainly, whoever it was saying that they sounded better. Mitch, what would you like to see in an expanded edition that could make Revenge better?
I would like to see Do You Want to Touch Me Now on there, and I'd also like to see them go back in the studio and maybe complete it with vocals and full production. And why not give a 2017 spin? I mean, Bruce is still around, Eric is still around. Why not? And then, a live show. I mean, I think the Revenge tour was the band at their very best. Eric Singer with a double bass drum. They were going back to Parasite. They were doing all. It's got to exist. I mean, we have Confidential. We have all these other video things that shows that there are shows out there that were videotaped. So it's got to be a show. So I would like to see that with a live show. And since the band is still around, why not cull some of the stuff from Unplugged and throw it on there? They did Every Time I Look at You and stuff. They said they had Every Time I Look at You with Bruce's solo. Let's hear what that sounds like. There's two versions of God Gave Rock and Roll to You, one from the soundtrack. Why not put both or pick? I mean, I don't like the song, but if you're gonna go, let's go full throttle. Let's do it. The band is still around in 2017. Why not have them just sit down and do 4 of the songs acoustically, or just something to show what the band would sound like today with the same players? I would get a kick out of that, and I think a lot of fans would too, to hear Bruce on a Kiss album again, right?
Any day of the week, most people would welcome him back. Just look how excited they got with BK3 when he did stuff, with Gene, So, that was very exciting. Lonnie, what's your thought on an expanded edition?
Yeah, I think a professionally recorded show from that club tour would be excellent. We've seen the Detroit show; it's on Kissology, and that, and maybe that São Paulo show from Brazil that's on the bonus disc for Kissology 3. I mean, that's fantastic. Mitch mentioned how they were on the top of their game live. I mean, in my opinion, the band never sounded better live than what they did in that era. I mean, that band is so freaking tight, and Paul's at his maybe his best vocally at the time too. I mean, the band is just outstanding. So some live stuff on there would be great. Do You Want to Touch Me Now? Obviously, it'd be stellar to hear them do something with that. And there's some demos out there too. And how when they did the Love Gun expanded version, whatever, they did how Paul doing that teaching demo of how Love Gun came together. There's some demos out there of Take It Off and Heart of Chrome with some scat vocals on there, to kind of hear how those songs were, how they were, sculpting those songs at the time, and to hear how they were coming together versus the final product would be nice on there as well, just so the average fan can kind of hear the song making process. So I think there's things they can do with that to make it better. And they did a lot of that stuff on the Unplugged tour '95 too, that they might be able to throw on there as well. So I think that there's enough material out there to make a deluxe Revenge, worthwhile to the band and to the fans.
Yeah, I think at MTV Unplugged, they did do Spit that night, so they should have a professional recording of that they could do it. But I'd like to see, obviously, Do You Want to Touch Me Now finished. Get Gene to sing it, and write the lyric for it. It'd be, hey, this is Paul's title, you're writing it, Gene, and get Bruce in to finish the lead work on there. Let Tommy be a part of it as well, because obviously he's on Revenge already, everyone. Yeah, as is, I like Mitch's comment about Every Time I Look at You, the Bruce solo. I'd love to hear stuff like that. Unholy, the Vinnie demos. Gene, obviously, we had Domino on the box set, so let's get Unholy, let's get Domino. Any of the demos for these songs. I don't want to hear the scat vocals. That's the sort of thing that you only want to listen to once, and that would be great on if the same person who organized the Love Gun one would probably put the scat vocals on. I'd rather hear the original demo that either the first take with the vocals, just like Unholy's different, and then live shows. Other than a club show, I don't want to hear anything from the Revenge Tour full concerts, because we've got that. I would rather they do at the same time in a Live 3 expanded edition and do all of the shows that were recorded for that and just put them out as the Live 3 expanded edition. So you get Indianapolis, you get Cleveland, you get Detroit, you get Nashville, which I believe was recorded as a test, and I think Eddie Kramer also went to St. Louis. So if that's available, all 5 of those in an Alive 3 box on its own, release them both at the same time, and I would be very happy. There's so much stuff. I'd like to have the version of Carr Jam without Bruce on it. I would just rather have the Eric Carr, Ace Frehley instrumental from '81, because they've obviously got it in stunning quality. So I would say dial that one back and put it on as well. Say, here's the original version. You still got Carr Jam on disc 1. And there's a lot of stuff. You could very easily have a very exciting expanded edition. And since this is only going to sell 1,700 copies its first week, you got nothing to lose by doing it. So, maybe Johnny Z's harmonica tracks as well, because I've never figured out where he is on this album. I don't hear it. So just no interviews. I mean, that on the what was it, Love Gun expanded? Yeah. Right in the middle.
I mean, really? No interviews. Just no interviews.
Yeah.
But the band is still around. The 4 guys are still here. Why not just do one special 2017 track or 2018 track? I don't know. The Revenge era was so short, and the Carnival of Souls era was so short. Get the 4 guys to do 3 songs as a bonus. I mean, come on. Why not? It's not going to hurt anybody.
Yeah. Talking about re-recording, and I'm just going to go completely off topic. I was thinking this week with Kiss World, they should have re-recorded Kissing Time with updated lyrics for all the countries that they're visiting this year. Another missed opportunity for Record Store Day. But there we go. So Revenge. Any last thoughts, anyone? Or have we been revenged to death and now have to go listen to the album? Mitch?
It's just great that 25 years later we still care about this album. I think it was a return to form. It was a revenge for Bob. It was a revenge for Gene. It was a revenge for their career, for their look. It was just Kiss being Kiss, and you regardless of whether you like the songs or not, it helped set the path for what we are in 2017. They weren't the joke in sequins anymore. They were Kiss, and we like Kiss.
Yep,
we want Kiss.
They were back to how they were supposed to be. Last thoughts, Ken?
Yeah, I mean, if you're on the fence about ever buying this, I think you got to go out and buy it, because it is one of their best of 20 or whatever many they have now. It's a album that I think stands the test of time, and it sounds great today, as it did when I first listened to it. So yeah, if you don't have it, I think you should buy it.
Absolutely. Lonnie?
I think it's a shame with how good it is, the poor amount of album sales that it has. I mean, it's fantastic. It stands the test of time, because it still sounds terrific when I listen to it even today. It just sounds so great. And it really was Kiss returning to form, and Kiss reinventing their image and moving forward into what ultimately what became the reunion. But it was really Kiss refocusing themselves and getting back on track, and it really shows for itself. It's my favorite Kiss album, and I think it always will be. It's fantastic.
If I can just say one last thing on the sound, Bruce once said this to me. He said it's the only album in the catalog that does not need to be remixed or remastered because it sounds so good. And he's absolutely right. I mean, the first 3 albums, they could definitely use a remixing and a cleaning up and Hot in the Shade, but this one, you don't need a remaster. It is remastered. It's perfect, right? I mean, they got the sounds right. So, they got the sounds right.
Yeah, you're not going to change a thing on this album in terms of its sonics. They hit it out of the ballpark, and that remains the same today. That was my major takeaway from listening to the album this week, is how glorious it sounds. Yeah, I can nitpick on some of the material here and there, but for the vast majority of it, it's just high quality, and Gene Simmons had his top knot back. Just look at his hair on the back cover. Gene Simmons was cool again. Hallelujah. So that's our celebration of the 25th anniversary of Kiss's Revenge. Chime in on the message board, which is back up today, really. Honest, DNS should be fixed for everyone. I'm on a new server for first time in 10 years, so that all goes good. Chime in, whether you follow us on Facebook, on iTunes, wherever you listen to us. If you got a comment to make, share your memories of Revenge and what makes it such a great album for you, because we'd love to talk about it. So we thank you for listening. Ken, Lonnie, thank you as always. Mitch, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been great to have you on the show. Wish you all the best with your show, and look forward to hopefully maybe even having you on again. So
absolutely. Would love to.
Keep us in mind if there's a topic that you want to talk about, and we'll do a show. So thank you all for listening, and we will see you next KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.